unexpected encounters and, well, unexpected side of people's character. I've always had a soft spot for that kind of thing. From the moment I met my college student girlfriend, I was completely smitten by the contrast in her personality. My name is Mike. I'm 30 and work in sales for a real estate company. I reckon I'm pretty average, like anyone you'd meet. If I have one thing to boast about, it's that I apparently have a knack for sales. I'm not exactly the motivated type, but for some reason, I've always been at the top of the sales charts since I joined. Getting big deals is what I'm known for in the office. I'm not particularly passionate about my job, and to be frank, I'm just working to eat. When I was job hunting, I was already determined to go with the first company that gave me an offer. And it happened to be this real estate agency. So when they try to ask me about my company spirit, I can't really answer it. Tonight, I'm sipping on some liquor that I don't even like, listening to my boss about his company pride. It's one of those typical corporate dinners, entertaining the bigwigs who were signing a huge deal with tomorrow. I was annoyed and wondered, why not just drink after we seal the deal? Inside, I'm seething, but on the outside, I'm all smiles. Guess you could say that's my special skill. By the time my boss was guiding the client into a taxi, saying hope all goes well tomorrow, I was wiped out. And now, I've got to hail a taxi for my own boss. What a pain. As I finally get a taxi, I stuff my boss inside and shut the door hard. He tells me, don't be late tomorrow. He's my direct supervisor, but he's not interested in the work's details. He just wants the credit and can't handle a deal on his own. Tomorrow's a competitive presentation, with a lot of rivals showing up. Feels more like I'm being used than relied on. Recently, I've come to realize that. I heave a sigh of relief as the taxi with my boss disappears from sight. I think of heading straight home and going to sleep, and I start heading to the nearest subway station. Despite it being a weekday, there's quite a crowd, and I weave through, trying not to bump into drunk folks. Fed up with the crowd, I opt for a less populated route, but that choice lands me in trouble. Someone help. Let go of me. I hear a young woman's plea for help in a dark alley. I instinctively turn towards the voice. I see a small-sized woman with glasses and a man who looks like a playboy, having some sort of argument. The guy is pulling the woman by the wrist, dragging her towards an exit where a white van with its sliding door open awaits, likely his buddies inside. This looks like some crime scene for sure. I think about it, but honestly, I'm not keen on getting involved. As I'm deciding whether to walk away or intervene, I lock eyes with the distressed woman. The desperation in her gaze behind those glasses holds me. Without thinking, I find myself stepping between the man and her. I must have moved faster than I ever believed I could. Before I could think, my body just moved on its own. I guess there was something captivating in her eyes. Can't you see she's not into it? And are those guys your pals? This looks like a kidnapping. Isn't this a crime? My words seem to unnerve the guy, and he lets go of her arm. Sheltering her behind me, I tell the guy, just give up. To be honest, fighting isn't my strong suit. I really don't like confrontations or complications. Yet here I am, stirred into action by the intensity of her gaze. Back off, old man, or you'll get hurt. A guy spouting off words like some hoodlum on the street. Looking closer, he seemed like a college student. Hey, are these folks your friends? I turned and asked the girl. I've seen him around campus, but I have no association with him. She responded firmly. The guy momentarily looked hurt by her words. A tussle between me and him continued with shouts of let go and back off. Soon, the distant sound of police sirens grew closer. Probably, a passerby had seen the incident and called the police. Hearing the sirens, The guy clicked his tongue in annoyance. Just when I thought it was over, a heavy punch came flying at me with incredible force. I blacked out as I was slammed against a wall. The last thing I remember was that moment. When I woke up, I found myself in an unfamiliar room. The sunlight coming through the curtains. I felt a pain on my cheek, but my back was in even more pain. It seemed like I was on the second floor, with the distant sound of machinery coming from below. I recognized the nostalgic scent in the air. It was the smell of ink. Rising from the bed I'd been laid on, I checked my sore back. It appeared I had some scrapes. An old-fashioned clock on the wall showed it was 2 p.m. Oddly, I didn't feel panicky or desperate even though I was absent from work and had an important meeting that day. I absent-mindedly wondered who had taken over the crucial deal I was supposed to handle, but I quickly gave up on the thought. My cell phone, which was by the pillow, had a broken screen and seemed to be non-functional, probably from when I fell. Inadvertently, I had become that guy who loses contact on such an important day. My boss must be in a real panic. I said a silent sorry in my head for a moment and then let the thought go. I walked down the stairs, drawn to the sound of machinery. I found what seemed like a living area above a workspace. Judging by the number of dishes in the kitchen, I guessed maybe 2 people live here. Yet, I had no idea where I was. In front of me, there was a large machine with metal plates lined against the wall. I then guessed it's an old-fashioned letterpress printing shop, something I'd seen in books. Beside the machine, a tall man, wearing an apron made of sailcloth, was working. "Excuse me." I spoke hesitantly. He looked up, recognizing me, and gave a warm smile. "Ah, you're awake. You had quite a night. How you tried to help Valerie but ended up getting the worst of it," he remarked. He introduced himself as the older brother of Valerie, the college girl I had tried to help the previous night. Apparently, after I passed out, Valerie had dragged me to this place. That explained the scrapes on my back. He added with a slightly apologetic grin, "We probably should have called an ambulance." "Hey, can I borrow your phone? I need to call my office. I've missed work without notice." He casually tossed me his cell phone. The unlock screen displayed a snapshot of him and Valerie laughing together. They seemed close. The response I got after calling my workplace was a series of angry shouts. At some point, I felt like this is something I can't handle on my own, so I switched to speakerphone, letting the guy hear such a call. The man, who was a letterpress craftsman, introduced himself as Bob. To begin with, I was told to show up, and I replied yes, then hung up the call. Bob said, "That's impressive." Well, it was a big job after all. What kind of job allows you to get verbally abused? Doesn't make sense, he said, and then went back to his work. I did think he had a point. "So, you got fired." He operated the printing press handle with a loud clang. "Probably a demotion. It's such a pain." Regardless of arriving early at the office, the situation wouldn't get better. That thought made me reluctant to even go to work. After finishing his work, Bob invited me upstairs saying, "Let's grab some lunch." "Hey, is that guy all right? Still unconscious?" Then, a college girl from last night, with plastic bags from a drugstore in both hands, kicked the entrance door open. She probably had to kick it since her hands were full, but she came in quite energetically. "Hey, welcome back. This guy here is either getting fired or demoted because of you." Bob said that with a smirk, and his sister, Valerie, looked pale and dropped the bag she was holding. Then she glared at me. I was taken aback by her intense stare and straightened up, staring back. "I got it. I'll take responsibility. I'll take care of you. Don't worry." Valerie seemed to have a peculiar way of thinking. Bob was laughing his heart out. In the end, I reached the office just before closing time. As soon as I placed my bag on my desk, I was called into the boss's office. Inside, the supervisor, manager, and the CEO were all present. All of them frowned and glared at me. "Because of you, everything's been ruined. Do you realize the loss you've caused the company?" the CEO said in a restrained, angry voice. Both the manager and supervisor nodded in agreement. They probably didn't prepare or go through the documents that would have allowed them to handle the situation without me. They clearly wanted to put all the blame on me. Then the CEO handed me a transfer order. "You're being transferred." I was being sent to a quiet branch office, where only unimportant tasks are handled. "Oh, never mind the transfer. Please accept this instead." I quickly pulled out my resignation letter, which I had kept in my suit's inner pocket, and handed it to the CEO. It was something I had written at that printing shop. The CEO and the manager's faces turned pale when they saw it. There was a commotion in the sales department as their top salesman, me, said he would quit. It seems they planned to demote me temporarily and bring me back to the headquarters once everything's settled. My sudden decision to quit left them scrambling. "Well then, I'll be going. Thank you for everything." As I bowed slightly and tried to leave the CEO's office, the CEO shouted, "Hold him back." The supervisor rushed to grab my arm. Leading to a minor scuffle, I was getting really fed up. During the struggle, a small message card fell from my pocket. It was made at the printing shop. As they taught me about the printing process, they made a business card-size message card for me. Embossed with the unique impression of letterpress printing, it read, "I'll take responsibility, Valerie." Looking at the card, a smile crept on my face. "What do you plan on doing after leaving the company? You think other companies will match your current salary?" At the CEO's angered voice, I turned back and gave a bright smile. The sight of my smile left the CEO slightly taken aback. "I think I've secured a permanent job, so I'm good." I felt incredibly refreshed as I stepped out of the boss's office with those words. The next day, I visited the Taggart letterpress printing owned by those siblings. "Please take responsibility," I declared. Valerie, rushing out from the back of the workshop, greeted me with a salute, saying, "Understood." Bob seemed a bit hesitant, but he hired me as a part-timer, and soon I officially joined the printing crew. Bob had an artisan spirit and was a bit quirky. Yet, he's a good guy. You can tell he really cares about his sister, Valerie. Valerie is an unusually conservative college girl for these days. She doesn't wear makeup and has thick glasses, giving her a plain look. But as I worked with her, she surprised me. Once, when ink splattered on her glasses and she couldn't see, we all laughed at her, but when she took off her glasses, I was astonished. Her beautiful almond-shaped eyes were a bright hazel, framed by long lashes. "Do you really have to laugh that much?" she pouted. Her cheeks turned peachy, and she looked simply delightful. Lost in admiration, Bob whispered to me, "She's a beauty, isn't she?" Without realizing, I nodded in agreement, and then felt a strong thud on my back. All the folks in our family are stunning. Seeing Bob smirk, I couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. It felt embarrassing, especially since my gaze towards Valerie had clearly changed since she took off her glasses. It was obvious that he had noticed, and it was embarrassing. Then, an incident made me realize the truth of Bob's words. In the evening, Valerie returned from college, holding large paper bags in both hands. "It's my Halloween costume, for a college event," she said. When she returned after changing in her room, I was stunned. Is it weird?" she asked. There she stood, wearing a mini bright red Chinese dress. Her usually hidden legs caught my attention. "Oh, are you interested in outfits like this?" I was about to respond, but felt a pain at the back of my head. Turning around, I found Bob holding a rolled-up magazine. The likely culprit of my sudden headache. "Valerie, it doesn't suit you much. Let's buy another one together later," Bob said, shielding my eyes and speaking gently to his sister. I murmured under my breath, "Protective brother." Of course, the next moment, I felt another thud on my head. "Oh right, sorry, I didn't mean to show something so awkward." Valerie, blushing furiously, dashed to her room. Deep down, I wished I could have seen more. "You're a fast learner, aren't you, Mike?" Valerie commented as we both sat at the workbench, refining imported zinc plates. I'd often find myself admiring her hands even during work. Her delicate fingers meticulously working on the plates looked almost sacred and beautiful. If she didn't wear her glasses, many more would notice her charm. I've always been good with my hands. Even now, Valerie says, "I'll take responsibility," with such sincerity. Bob would just laugh, and at first, I didn't take her seriously. But as the days went by, I realized something. She genuinely wanted to take responsibility. She's sincere, a bit clumsy, and slightly out of touch with the world. But all these traits made me fall for her, without even realizing it. One day, as the three of us were having lunch as usual, there was a feature on historical buildings in downtown New York on TV. I have a passion for historic buildings, and my only hobby on my days off is walking around to see them. As I started explaining the buildings shown on screen to the other two, Valerie leaned in to look me into my face. What's up? Sorry, was I being too loud?" I thought I might have been over-talking, and I apologized to Valerie. She shook her head and stood up, saying, "No, that's not it. Hey, what do you really want to do, Mike? Are you staying here just because I said I'd take responsibility?" Confronted by her intense gaze, I couldn't answer immediately. I thought to myself that I shouldn't give a half-hearted reply. "I'll think about it and get back to you." Upon hearing my words, Valerie sat back down, saying, "All right. Mike, I know you hate overthinking stuff, but take some time tonight and really ponder about it." Even though Bob kept his eyes glued to the TV, his words hit me hard. That night, I went home and reflected on what they had said. I realized I had been living life without much purpose. It was the same with my previous job. I feel like I was just going for the motions, working out of habit. No real attachments or regrets. Even when it came to girls, I had an easy come, easy go attitude. What did I really want to do? I spread a notebook out on the table and began jotting down everything. Food I wanted to eat, books I wanted to read, things I wanted to do, and historic buildings I wanted to see all over the world. In no time, the pages were filled. "I can't do all this. There's not enough time," I sighed, looking over the filled pages. Then suddenly burst into laughter. There were photo books of historical buildings on a shelf, which I hadn't paid much attention to. If I hadn't met those two, I might have spent my life simply sighing over the images in those books. After laughing heartily, I felt a weight lift off my chest. "I'm quitting my part-time job today." The next morning, I announced this to Valerie and Bob right away. Bob, with a puzzled expression, remarked, "You're always so unpredictable." Yet I could tell he wasn't mad. "You figured out what you wanted?" Valerie asked, and I nodded confidently. "So, what's the plan?" "I'm going to see everything I've ever wanted to, until I'm satisfied." Valerie gave a delighted smile. "That sounds wonderful." I explained to them about my plan to visit historical sites around the world. Bob was concerned about the finances, but I had some savings from when I worked at a real estate agency. If I run out, I plan to pick up another part-time job. "Valerie, I'm sorry. I always teased you about taking responsibility. You don't really have to. I apologize, Valerie, for always teasing by telling her to take responsibility. I thought I should make sure to tell Valerie that she's now free. When I did, Valerie bit her bottom lip and looked up at me. She always makes that expression when she wants to convey something serious. You don't have to apologize. Please don't. Instead, I just want to ask one favor. That's what Valerie said to me. It was the first time she had ever asked me for a favor, so I was taken aback. "Hut, a favor? What is it?" I asked hesitantly, and with a serious look on her face, she said, "Is it okay if I wait for you, Mike?" I thought, what a sweet request. "Hey, Bob, can you step out for a bit? I want to hug Valerie." Bob retorted, "You know my answer is no. Don't push your luck." It seems touching her is off limits until I return. I feel the day I'll be calling Bob brother-in-law is getting closer. As proof, even though Bob verbally says no, he's still smiling. If God exists, I truly want to thank him. Thank you for leading me to the sibling that day. I've traveled for 3 years and have seen much of what the world has to offer. But there's still more I want to see. I've been documenting my travels on a blog. And in doing so, I started getting interview requests and offers to write essays and columns for travel magazines. Now, writing for them has become my job. The rapid change still astonishes me. To keep my promise, I opened the doors of the Tucker print shop. I'm back, sorry for keeping you waiting. Upon my unexpected return, Valerie was in shock. When she realized, she gave a big smile and saluted me. "I've been waiting for you. Welcome back." She ran towards me and hugged me immediately, and of course, I hugged her back tightly. So, what did you think about the story? Subscribing to our channel will motivate us to create more content. Well then, see you in the next video.